Senator is recognized.
23 years ago today, forces of evil brought their war on the United States to American soil. They filled a clear blue sky with smoke, fire, and the shattered lives of 2,977 innocent people. Before the dust had settled, the world witnessed the extraordinary heroism of first responders, the compassion of neighbors and volunteers, and the will of a proud nation not to let this savagery go unanswered. The terrorists had started this war, but America resolved to finish it. At times, that resolve has wavered. Over the years since September the 11th, 2001, I've counseled administrations of both parties not to shortchange, hamstring, or abandon our fight against the terrorists or let up on the adversaries who support them. I've urged colleagues in Congress not to make the job of the warfighter harder by taking essential counterterrorism authorities off the table. And I'll continue to do so as our colleagues consider our recent vote on Section 702 and the one we'll take in less than 2 years to further extend this vital intelligence collection authority. The Biden-Harris administration pretends the war on terrorism is over. The Vice President herself claimed last night that, quote, "There's not one member of the United States military who's in active duty in a combat zone for the first time this century." Well, Mr. President, this would, of course, be news to U.S. service members who conducted operations against ISIS in Iraq last week, and to the sailors intercepting Houthi rockets in the Red Sea, and to the families of service members killed and injured in the attack on Tower 22 near Jordan's border with Syria earlier this year. Our current commander-in-chief and the Biden-Harris administration are not the first to chase the tail of shutting down terrorist detention at Guantanamo Bay. They're not the first to indulge in the idea of a pivot away from a region full of important U.S. interests. And they're not the first to suggest that America gets to decide unilaterally when threats from Afghanistan end. But they were the ones who followed through with the disastrous retreat that torched American credibility and left 13 service members dead. The administration pinned its hopes on a mistaken idea that because the U.S.-led coalition had made tremendous progress in keeping terrorist threats under control, we could continue to do so from over the horizon. So how's that going? Despite assurances from the Secretary of Defense that over-the-horizon operations would not suffer from a lack of human intelligence after the U.S. withdrawal, the administration hasn't conducted a single strike, not one, against ISIS-K, the terrorists responsible for the Abbey Gate bombing, among other atrocities since 2001. Of course, that's not because the terrorists have been quiet. In fact, by one analysis this year, ISIS-K planned 21 external plots or attacks in 9 countries in the previous 12 months alone, compared to just 3 between 2018 and the spring of 2022. The OD&I annual threat assessment was forced to acknowledge that, quote, terrorists will maintain an interest in conducting attacks against U.S. persons, allies, and interests worldwide. And indeed, America's retreat from Afghanistan has invited violence elsewhere, from the resurgence of the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, to the AQAP in Yemen, to al-Qaeda affiliates across the Sahel. And then there's Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and Hezbollah, and the Houthis, and Iraq terrorist groups, all of whom have been trained and equipped, aided and abetted by the world's most active state sponsor of terror, Iran. Hamas' attack on October 7th is described as Israel's September the 11th. Relative to population, it was actually September the 11th 15 times over. It was the deadliest day for the Jewish people since the Holocaust, and it wouldn't have been possible without the involvement of Tehran. The chaos stemming from this genocidal assault and the violent choreography by the IRGC of attacks on Israel and U.S. interests across the region is evidence of the failure of this administration's passive, accommodating approach to Iran and the terrorist proxies. America's weakness and hesitation will not deter our adversaries. Withholding critical assistance from partners on the front lines will not defeat them. This is true in Israel just as it's true in Ukraine. And there is doubt that allies, partners, and adversaries in Asia and elsewhere are watching a tentative America pull its punches. They're questioning our resolve and our commitment to our friends. If we're unwilling to change Iran's calculus and compel an end to attacks on American forces in Iraq and Syria or international vessels on the high seas, and if we're unwilling to stand with partners like Israel or Ukraine, can we be trusted to stand up to the PRC? 23 years ago, a dangerous world struck America here at home. We must not wait for today's threats to do the same.